Welcome back to another AQ3D video. Years ago, I had some videos on suggestions for AQ3D, and since then I've come out with like 4 or 5 other videos that were community suggestions from the community for how to improve AQ3D or what features or things they would like to see in AQ3D. I've decided to take a look at those videos and see which of those suggestions have actually made it into the game as of this date, which is June in 2023. So let's see what suggestions actually made it into the game. If you guys enjoyed this video, do me a favor and tap that like button, smash the subscribe, and turn the notification so you don't miss any of my uploads. A lot of my viewers are not subscribers, so I would really appreciate it if you guys could tap that sub button. It's a small step for you, but a big thing for me. I'd like to give a big shout out to all my YouTube members. Because of you guys, I'm able to continue to do what I love to do. Thank you for all the support. If you guys are interested in joining, you can tap that join button down below. The first suggestions video was from 5 years ago, and the very first suggestion was PvP, and of course that has made it into the game. The next suggestion was large maps. As you guys already know, that has made it into the game as well, since we do have a lot of large maps. The next one was make Yolgers more interesting. Now, years ago, I mean, like I said, this is 5 years ago this video was made, and this was something even before then that Artix had talked about making Yolgers more interesting by having some mini games in there or other things. They haven't done anything regarding that, and the bathroom in Yolgers still isn't working. The next suggestion was guilds, and this has made it into the game now. It is still bare-boned, however, they are working on enhancing the guild feature. The next suggestion, of course, is trading, and this has been something, I mean, like I said, this is 5 years ago, and people were asking for trading back then. I don't ever personally see trading coming, but who knows? It's definitely not in the game right now. More badges. This is another suggestion, and this did make it into the game. Now, the problem with this is the badges don't really mean anything because there's really no way to see your character page. At least there's no easy way to see your character page, which makes the character pages kind of useless. More ranged classes. Now, within the last 5 years, we have gotten more ranged classes, so that definitely made it in. More free-to-play travel forms, and this did make it into the game. There are quite a few free travel forms that people can get, and there are more that are introduced on a yearly basis. So yeah, this definitely made it in. An emote button, because back when this video was made, there were no emote buttons. You couldn't just press a button and then activate an emote. Everything had to be typed through a command, through a specific, so if you want to wave, you would have to type /wave in order to wave. There was no emotes button, now there is. Less reskins. This was a suggestion that we got. Now, back when this video was made, we got a ton of reskins, but it made sense because there was only one person back then that could actually make 3D meshes. The artists that were working on the game did not have that capability at that time. Now there are a few people who can do 3D meshes, hence why we do have more original looking 3D models compared to, you know, before. But we still do get a pretty good number of reskins, which is unfortunate, but it does make sense because it saves a lot of resources being able to reuse an existing 3D model. Non-combat skills. It took almost 5 years for this to actually make it into the game, but we do have a non-combat skill. Now, it does say that mining is coming soon, but mining is not on the agenda right now, so that even shouldn't really be there because people are still expecting it to actually happen. I have not heard anything about mining actually coming to the game, so it might never actually come. We might only ever get one non-combat skill, but personally, I would really love to see mining come into the game, but I would like it to be different than the fishing, so it's something completely new. But anyways, we'll have to wait and see. At least we did get one non-combat skill. Gender change. This is something that you were not able to do back then, and now you can. It does cost dragon crystals. I'm pretty sure it costs dragon crystals to change your gender, but at least the capability is there. Pets. This was something that was also suggested 5 years ago. I don't know how long it took after this video before we finally did get pets, but it was probably a year or so, and we finally did get pets. So they made it into the game. more monster drops, and this is something that we still lack in the game. So while I will say since this video we have had more monster drops, but we don't have more monster drops in crafting. More boss fights with good loot, and this of course is way back in the day. We didn't have very many bosses back then with good loot, and I mean we still kind of lack in the whole good loot department from the boss fights, because again most of it is craftables. So I would still push to have more monster drops, including stuff that drops from bosses. An auto loot system. Technically we have something kind of like that. It's not exactly an auto loot, but it is easy to grab your loot now compared to way back in the day. A Legion faction suggestion. This is something that we actually don't have in the game. Kind of surprised because we've had that in AQ Worlds for so long. Now that Nalgath has been introduced, we could have a nation faction as well, and then you rank up one or the other. They could do the same thing with werewolves and vampires. They could have factions for those. They could have a lot more factions and ranking systems in that would give us more retention. There would be more reason to play back in those older areas and stuff. I think this is something they should still push, is to have factions of different things. In the video I did show an example of the reputations in AQ Worlds that they have, and we could easily have that. I mean, you've got your vampire right there, you've got your Lycan right there, and there was factions for all kinds of other different things, evil, good, dwarf hold. Like, it's so many different factions that we could have in AQ3D, and I think that would be really awesome to give us something else to rank up in those areas. Keep the party together. This was another suggestion, and this actually does happen. So when you leave a dungeon, this was the suggestion, was that when you go into a dungeon and then when you come out, you were always dismissed from the party. But now that is not the case, and so this suggestion actually made it into the game. AFK Animation. Now we don't have an AFK animation, however we do get the tag now that pops up above their head showing that they are AFK. So it would have been cooler if they had an animation that went along with it, whether they're sleeping or something like that. I think that'd be kind of cool, but the fact that we do have some kind of indicator they're AFK is nice. Swapable skills via a skill tree. Now this is something that never actually did happen. However, the closest we got to this was the cross skill, which you can take from multiple classes. So I'm going to say this made it into the game in a sense. Dual wielding. This is something, of course, back then we did not have, and now we do. So that made it into the game. The next suggestion was mounts. Now this did not make it into the game, nor do I foresee this ever coming in the game. I can't say it won't, but it seems unlikely that we will get mounts, seeing as how they've gone so far with the travel form system. Subclasses. Now we did not get subclasses, nor do I foresee this coming in the future. However, we do kind of have a little thing sort of like that. For instance, Berserker. In order to get Berserker, you need to rank out your warrior up to a certain rank in order to get to Berserker. So in a sense, it's kind of a subclass. Daily quests. This was a suggestion that did make it into the game. A login reward system. This is another suggestion, and we do have that now. The daily chest that you can open, that is the login reward. So this did make it into the game. A weekly or monthly quest for Guardians. Now, we do have a daily quest that we can do, and I think that's probably as close as we're going to get. Next suggestion was difficult quests or difficult items to get, and we definitely do have that in the game now. I mean, just look at the Wasteland, perfect example. Organizing the bank or inventory. This was a suggestion from 5 years ago and is still not in the game. I think this should be prioritized because I would definitely love to see something like this in the game. Being able to view your bank items, this suggestion did make it into the game. Before I get to the next suggestion, I just wanted to mention we didn't have bank previews. That was why the previous suggestion was something that we finally do have, but back then we didn't have bank previews. So morphs and pots not in inventory. Now you might think this is supposed to say morphs and pets, but I will explain. So the travel forms were the only thing. We didn't have pets back when this video was made 5 years ago. And so the travel forms were in the inventory. Since then, they have been moved to their own slot so they don't take up any inventory space. Pets were also in the same vein, and they also now do not take up any inventory. Health potions still take up inventory, but it's not a huge problem because it only takes up one spot, so it's not a big problem. But I don't think they stacked very much back then, and maybe you had more health potions. I'm not exactly sure, but so at least they did this is pretty much, I will say that this is in the game now. Housing. This is something that 5 years ago we talked about, and we are still talking to it today, but at least now it's on the game plan and it is in pre-conception stages, so who knows, in a year or two we will finally have houses. Being able to store items in your house, this is something that is still a long way off if it ever happens.